start, my name is Kerry Dingle, Director of the charity WORLDwrite and our citizen TV station WORLDwrite. I do know a lot of you, but not all of you. And thank you so much for coming. I know it's not an easy place to find, such as Clapton in our beloved Hackney. Today's Freedom Breakfast reception really has been inspired by our East End heroine, Sylvia Pankhurst, who 100 years ago this year, as you know, unlike her mother, carried on fighting for universal suffrage. She wasn't happy that in 1918 only some women over 30 who were considered to be not flighty or flappers, should get the vote. And a lot of people, interestingly, if you read Hansard and the minutes of the parliamentary debates at the time, a lot of people today think that women back in 1918 got the vote because of their war work. But if you look at what really happened, it was women under 30 who were doing most of the work in the munitions factories, and they didn't get the vote. And interestingly, in Hansard, the arguments between Lloyd George and others were all against the idea that women should be given the vote as a reward, because it wasn't sweets. And those who were pro-suffrage were against the idea of it being a reward, because they saw it as wholly patronising and actually quite insulting to women. Sylvia, against all of them, said only the universal franchise for men and women will do. And Sylvia was someone who also campaigned against the First World War, unlike her mother, who downed tools, renamed her paper Britannia, and recruited for the war effort. So Sylvia is a heroine and is someone who went to prison more than any other suffragette. She introduced the sleep strike and no sitting down strike, as well as the hunger strike, and was prepared to take on the police and anti-suffragists and all those against her, and always argued for her ideas in public, never behind closed doors. And it's in that spirit of robustness, and many of you maybe won't know, but in Bow, in Victoria Park in Bow, those of you that know it, she even set up her own citizens' militia inspired by James Connolly, where over 1,000 men and women actually trained with arms to take on the police and deal with the kind of savage attacks they were getting for their endeavours. So quite a hero, quite a heroine, and someone who I think demonstrates a robustness that women today should think about as being a great way forward. Not being prepared to be scared, not calling for protection. Can you imagine the likes of Sylvia and the suffragettes asking the state to protect them? How ridiculous. Can you imagine them worrying about catcalling? I don't think so, okay? They had much bigger things to deal with. So it's in that spirit. They used to hold, as you can see in the picture here, and there's Sylvia there. This was a breakfast reception for a woman called Mrs. Tanner. They used to hold breakfast receptions for the suffragettes newly freed from prison, and Sylvia would present them with the scrolls that she designed. And these are Sylvia's designs with the angels and so on. Her artwork's wonderful, but you need to watch our film about Sylvia later today if you haven't seen it, or you can get the DVD over here, take it home and share it with everyone. That's loads from me, but that's the reason we're having a Freedom Breakfast reception. We've nominated some amazing women. We were going to put it out to the vote on these nominated women, but then we thought, actually no. Why do we want people to compete? You know, why do we, these are all our contemporary heroines who've been very outspoken and robust in their views on behalf of freedom and women. So why would we want, you know, people going, oh, I like her but don't like her and she's got the wrong hair. Not the way to go. So we decided, let's take the best women we know that have helped our charity and we have filmed to great effect, and celebrate what they represent today in that spirit of Sylvia and robustness. I'm delighted now to shut up and hand you over to Ella Whelan. Some of you will know Ella's great work. Fantastic book she's written called What Women Want. She's a columnist for Spiked. She's regularly in the media. She always speaks her mind, and she is hosting the rest of this little breakfast freedom reception. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carrie. I'm delighted to be here with WORLDwrite. It's a fantastic thing. I usually, to be honest, hate International Women's Day. Today is an exception because usually it's about celebrating the woman who once read a book on a bus, or it celebrates women in this kind of empty way. It doesn't really get to the heart of what it means to be fighting for freedom today, what women want and need today. It's often a bit shallow, but I'm very delighted that today I'm going to be able to give dues to some of the women who have inspired me personally and inspired lots of young women in their political endeavours. So today I'm happy that it's International Women's Day and I'm delighted to be celebrating. So let's get started.
I think there is a tendency for in a way, red tape and officious mechanisms become the way we relate to one another. And so we sort of start to talk to each other through these systems. So one of the other things we've been campaigning on is things called community protection notices. And these are essentially powers that allow councils to issue essentially an on-the-spot ASBO to someone, telling them to do something or not to do something. And if you don't do it, it's a criminal offence. But we found out what these were about, what they're being issued for. And there were things like, you must cut your grass. You must not feed pigeons in your gardens. One man was, you must clean your windows. Essentially what had happened is, I think neighbours were complaining about neighbours to the council. Or perhaps the council officer was walking and thought they looked like really messy windows. But in a way, it became a civic relationship, a relation between neighbours that was being conducted through the council and forms of officialdom.
Well, that was Josie Appleton. Josie is the director and founder of the Manifesto Club, which is a brilliant organisation and has featured in many of its campaigns and WORLDwrite's videos. She's the author of Officious, Rise of the Busybody State, and campaigner on contemporary freedom issues, from the French burqa ban to smoking bans, from free speech to common issues, common law liberties. She's highlighted the dangers in looking to the law to solve problems and has championed the capacity we all have to deal with problems ourselves. I'm afraid Josie's currently in France. She sends her thanks and best wishes, and she's very honoured to be remembered today.
The expansion of NATO being the absolute one of the biggest mistakes made by the West, certainly since the end of the Second World War. I think it's done more to poison East-West relations, more to trap any leader of Russia, not just Putin, in a corner, than almost anything that anybody has done.
That was the writer and broadcaster Mary Dejevsky, who wanted to be here today but couldn't make it at the last minute. Never afraid to challenge the consensus, Mary is one of the country's most respected writers and commentators on Russia, the EU and the US, and has worked as a foreign correspondent all over the world. She is a former chief editorial writer at The Independent and regularly appears on radio and television. WORLDwrite's volunteers have filmed Mary on panel debates and found her determination to get to the truth, to speak out on what really is happening, most inspiring. She's more than earned her scroll, and we thank her today.
You know, there are lots of nuances in the relationships between men and women. I mean, more than half of people in this country meet their future husband or wife at work. Everyone knows, you know, that flirting goes on, banter goes on. Do we want to live in such a sterile environment where everyone is terrified of even saying, oh, you look nice in that dress? I just think we need to know where the line is. And I think everyone watching right now and everyone who listens to my talk radio show knows perfectly well where the line is.
Hard to keep quiet. That was the journalist Julia Hartley-Brewer, who couldn't be here today because she's currently running her radio show, which doesn't finish in time. Julia is a newspaper columnist and radio show presenter at Talk Radio. She has been nominated as a contemporary heroine for refusing to be portrayed as a victim of sexual harassment. I'm sure all of you will remember the news recently. The Sun revealed that the Defence Secretary Michael Fallon had touched her knee 15 years ago. This caused a huge furore, and she tweeted after the Sun's revelation that the incident happened in 2002, No one was remotely upset or distressed by it. My knees remain intact. Which was a very welcome intervention into the panic about Westminster. Julia's stand against victimhood should more than earn her a Freedom Scroll, and as a great exemplar of what women today really are.
I think some of the biggest examples of misogyny I see nowadays, ironically, come from feminism. The argument that women are, need looking after, need protecting, need putting on a pedestal. We need adverts taken away from us. We need song lyrics banned. We need social media to be monitored and restricted for our benefit. I think this presentation of women as these kind of vulnerable little flowers is really nauseating and does not do women any favours whatsoever.
Dr. Joanna Williams, author of the book Women versus Feminism, Why We All Need Liberating from the Gender Wars. I couldn't have put it better. Joanna is the education editor at Spite and writes frequently on feminism. She's been nominated today for her amazing work as an author and a writer, and her latest extraordinary book, which I really urge you all to go out and buy, has inspired WORLDwrite's new film, Women, A Success Story. Her commitment to overcoming the gender wars, seeing men as our allies, not our enemies, in the fight for a better world, makes her more than worthy of a recipient of a Freedom Scroll, in the fine tradition of Sylvia Pankhurst. Joanna is attending the WORLDwrite Suffragette Tea Party later today, where she will receive her scroll and is then taking part in a filmed discussion show at the WORLDwrite Centre on the real suffragettes and whether Vogue is right to refer to the women it selected as the new suffragettes. So, congratulations, Joanna.
I loved the referendum, I loved the campaign, and actually I thought the content and the arguments were quite rich. There was a huge amount of stuff in the media, lots of blogs, lots of public events, 10,000 activists for the Leave campaign, which is an incredible mobilization, actually. I think that was brilliant. And many of those people, most of those people, motivated by democracy, not by fear, not by hatred or xenophobia, but a genuine passion for the ideas.
That was Dr. Munira Mirza, former Deputy Mayor of London for Education and Culture. Munira was selected for her outspoken belief in universalism, defence of civil liberties, freedom and democracy, and the brave challenge she has made to victim culture and the grievance-taking it encourages. She is a founding supporter of Change Britain, a cross-party campaign set up to make success of Britain's exit from the EU. Munira's resolute belief in the capacity of all citizens to have their say, in the will of the majority and democracy, her refusal to bow to special treatment or protection for women or minorities, who she sees as more than capable equals, puts her firmly in the tradition of Sylvia Pankhurst. Munira can't be with us today, and she is hosting a meeting herself this morning, but she has sent us this message, if I can read it out. I'm very sorry I can't be with you today. I would have loved to be there with so many amazing women, all of whom I admire very much. It's a genuine honour to be nominated for a Freedom Scroll, which takes inspiration from the suffragettes. We have much to learn from the suffragette movement. It was composed of women who didn't wait around to be empowered by someone else. Instead, they took control of their own lives and helped push through democratic change for everyone. Thanks very much to the volunteers and friends of WORLDwrite who nominated me and for creating this great initiative. Keep on doing the superb work you do, and I hope to see you at future events.
2 years ago, a mom named Maria overslept because she'd been spending all night with an aunt who died. So she got home at 5 in the morning. At 8 in the morning, when her kid was supposed to get up, she was still asleep. So the kid gets up, gets himself breakfast, goes outside in his clothes, thank God, and there's no bus. He's missed the bus. So he starts walking to school. This is so unusual now to see a child by himself walking to school that somebody called the cops. The cops came. They said, "What happened?" "Oh, my mom overslept." "Oh, okay." And so they drive him to school. They turn around. They came back to Maria's house. They knocked on the door. "Where's your son?" "Oh, he's got to get up. Oh, I overslept." And she says that the cops said to her, "You're despicable." And so they put her in handcuffs. They put her in the cop car. They took her to the police station. If you look on my blog, you can see the mug shot. And that was 2 years ago. They're still dealing with the repercussions. The authorities got involved. She's raising her kids wrong. She let them go to, a child was out alone. Obviously, she's very irresponsible. And literally, she's still dealing with the courts.
Well, that was Lenore Skenazy, president of Let Grow. Lenore can't be here today. She's in America. She lives in the US. She has been nominated for her tireless campaigning and for her feisty belief that there's no reason kids today can't do everything their parents did as kids. Lenore was elected as America's worst mum by the New York City newspaper after she let her 9-year-old child ride the subway alone. And in response, Skenazy founded the book, blog and movement Free Range Kids, with the aim of fighting the belief that our children are in constant danger. Lenore is now the president of Let Grow, which she set up last year. Their aim is to end the culture of overprotection through and pass the Let Grow Bill of Rights. And Lenore has sent this message that I'll read out. I'm thrilled to be recognised by WORLDwrite for sharing in the battle for freedom, which includes freedom from hysteria, freedom from laws and social norms based on hysteria, and freedom for children to take part in society, not treated as too fragile or dumb to partake. And let's not forget freedom for women, not to have to spend every waking hour watching, worrying, teaching, driving and watching their kids, that some more, as if they need constant attention, support and surveillance. Both generations need a break. Anyway, I not only wish that I was with you today, I invite all you revolutionaries to avail yourselves of the extra room in our apartment, very generous, take her up on that, when you come through New York. We're all in this together, and I like having someone to go to breakfast with. In fact, I'm sorry to be missing the scones and clotted cream we Americans assume you Brits are always eating. Thanks for that, Lenore. You can write to Lenore at lenore@letgrow.org, and she hopes to see us all soon, though probably not all of us at once. Just been informed that Mary's come into the room. Hello. Yeah. So I will.
We've just all clapped you. We've all clapped you, and you see the clip of you in action.
That sounds absolutely ideal. I really apologise for making an entrance.
Can we just get you to stand up a minute, Mary? And this is for you and your heroic correspondence and speaking your mind. Thank you so much.
I'd like to say two things. The first is I'm terribly, terribly sorry I'm so late. There's all sorts of reasons, but the day began appallingly when my car from the BBC to go and talk about the Russian spy case didn't arrive at 7:15. From there, things have stayed pretty bad. The second is that I'm absolutely, on principle, objecting to any sort of awards, any sort of anything, but I make an exception for anything to do with Kerry and anything to do with anything that is vaguely subversive. And I encourage everybody to do the same. So thank you very much.
My belief is that abortion should be provided to women under law and in practice as early as possible and as late as necessary. I actually don't think that there should be a law on abortion over and above law which regulates medical procedures in general. So in that sense, my view on legal reform would be that abortion should be decriminalised. That's to say the 1861 Act should be repealed, or at least a section of it which criminalises abortion. So just to bear in mind that in this country, abortion is de facto a criminal offence. It remains regulated under the criminal law, not the civil law. What the 1967 Abortion Act does is to create a defence for doctors who provide abortion against the underlying criminality of abortion. So we presume in this country that abortion is criminal, and both the doctor and the woman can be subject to imprisonment, as we've now seen, unless the terms of the 1967 Abortion Act apply. I fundamentally disagree with that legal position.
Well, that was Dr. Ellie Lee, Director of the Centre for Parenting Culture Studies. Ellie has been nominated for the excellent discussion programme that she made with WORLDwrite, which is still much used as an educational resource. And her resolute belief in freedom for women and parents stands in good stead too. She is the author of Abortion, Motherhood and Mental Health, Medicalising Reproduction in the United States and Great Britain, and she's the co-author of Parenting Culture Studies. Her work on health-related issues, including abortion, reproductive technologies, infant feeding, postnatal depression and men's health, have consistently put the needs of families first and made freedom from meddling, regulation and control by so-called experts paramount. Ellie's belief in people rather than bureaucrats and policy wonks has made her a highly respected heroine for humanists and freedom lovers everywhere. Ellie is sorry she can't be here today, and I have a message to read out from her. Thank you so much for the invitation to attend the Freedom Breakfast reception on International Women's Day. I can't come because I'll be on a picket line from first thing in the morning at the university where I work, taking part in the lecture strike. In the afternoon, I'll be introducing and showing your brilliant WORLDwrite documentary, Sylvia Pankhurst, Everything is Possible, as part of our Teach Out activities for staff and students. I hope this is a fitting response, in lieu of me being unable to be with you in person and have the honour of receiving a scroll based on those designed by Sylvia. I feel deeply honoured, and blushingly so, that you have included me in the list of those whose work you have chosen to highlight. I loved being able to take part in the discussion about abortion you filmed. I'm very pleased to know that it has been watched so much and hopefully has encouraged others to think about this vital aspect of freedom and autonomy. With all the best wishes, Professor Ellie Lee.
What I don't like about what's going on now is feminists have been trying all the time to say, oh my goodness, women must be empowered, they must be strong, they will be strong, women... And they seem to spend their time now saying that women are traumatised because some silly old drunk in Parliament put his hand on her knee or anything like that. You can't have it both ways. You can't say women are strong and empowered and then say, they're scared. All that sort of thing.
Well, that was the fabulous Dame Anne Leslie, who is here with us today. We're delighted. Anne has been nominated.
I've never seen anything I do.
It was a fantastic performance on Channel 4. Look it up if you haven't seen it already. Dame Anne Leslie has been nominated for her distinguished career as a reporter and a foreign correspondent at a time when such jobs were considered unsuitable for women. Always prepared to speak her mind and make a stand against the Victorian view of women as pathetic victims, puts her up there in the suffragette tradition and a grand nominee for the Freedom Scroll. I'm very, very delighted to hand Dame Anne Leslie our Freedom Scroll. Thank you.
Having said that women are incredibly strong and fearless and everything, the trouble is, I'm not strong at the moment. I'm not going to stand up. But the whole thing of whether women are strong or allowed to be strong takes me back to my incredible grandmother, who knew the Pankhursts, disapproved of them. But she knew everybody. She lived in China most of the time. She married in China, and she was always called Granny Ming in the family. She was terrifying, and I realised that she didn't have to... She decided what she wanted to do was become a sanitary inspector. Not possible, you'd think. I mean, she was a very respectable family. But she used to go with her father, who was a priest, not a priest, a vicar, round the slums. And they were so frightful that she thought something should be done about it. So she decided, I'm going to be a sanitary inspector. This was terrifying for a woman, because the landlords would throw her downstairs, not allow her to inspect anything, would stuff all the workers into cupboards and when she was coming. And then she got a whole lot of slum landlords struck off, or whatever you do with the landlords. Anyway, she had one great thing apart from doing all that and disapproving of the Pankhursts, simply because she didn't like them smashing windows. She said, you know, windows are quite valuable. I think you don't do that. But the other great success she had was she got, her sons all went to Balliol in Oxford. No lavatories, of course, for women, or any public lavatories. So she decided that she was going to campaign to have a woman's lavatory just outside Balliol so that she could go and see her kids. And she got George Bernard Shaw to campaign with her for women's lavatories. And, blow me, she won. And the trouble was, all her friends, in fact one of her cousin woman, never spoke to her again. She said that was so disgusting. That you should talk about these things, like women need to go to the loo. I was never really a particular feminist, except I was when I found that not being a feminist didn't actually get you anywhere. I was quite successful straight off, really. You know, I left Oxford, got a job in newspapers, and everything was going very well, and I was being paid very well. Nothing wrong. I wanted to buy a house. No, not possible. I couldn't get a mortgage on the grounds that I was a woman, I wasn't married, and I got so angry because why couldn't I? I was being paid more than my male, revolutionary, than my male colleagues. They could get, you know, mortgage from, you know, Windsor Castle or something. I couldn't get anything at all, and I would be told by these irritating young men, look, why don't you find a nice young man, marry him, and then you can have a mortgage. Well, he will have the mortgage. There was a feeling that, you know, women were just too irresponsible to be lent any money. And I came back into the office in a frightful temper, and I started telling a colleague of mine, male, about this, and he said, oh, thank goodness. And I said, what do you mean, thank goodness? He said, I am having to have a lunch with Lord Cohen, who's the head of the biggest mortgage company. And I had no idea what I want to talk to him about, nothing at all. And he's terribly boring, and, oh, do you mind if I use your episode? And he came back after lunch, he said, miracle. Lord Cohen said he was a fantastic fan of yours. He is now giving you a mortgage for whatever you want, and he is speaking to the young man who refused you in the first place. So hopefully, in fact, you know, he lost his job for being an irritating, you know, pig. Anyway, so I then started getting involved in, to a certain extent, with feminism because I realised how I was so lucky. But most women weren't. They couldn't get mortgages, they couldn't do all sorts of things. And this is the 60s, so it's not, we're not talking about, you know, my grandmother's day. I think it's terrific being a woman today, it really is. And it's partly because of all you lot.
But am I just an absolute insensitive, nasty piece of work who is saying to all young people, oh, get over it? Sort of. I do actually believe that there is a problem of generational fragility. That is a real, genuine problem for the young. And actually, speaking at universities and schools over the last few years, I've noticed an increasing tendency for the young to become not argumentative with me, but emotionally distressed by what I've said.
That was Claire Fox, Director of the Academy of Ideas, who is here with us today, very delighted. Claire has been selected for her inspiring work in establishing the annual Battle of Ideas Festival, where the motto is Free Speech Allowed, which many WORLDwrite volunteers have filmed and learned from over the years. Many of you will have heard Claire on BBC Radio 4's The Moral Maze, where she never holds back in challenging sacred cows. She is author of the free speech book I Find That Offensive, and Sylvia Pankhurst would certainly approve of her commitment to always winning arguments publicly rather than manoeuvring behind closed doors. Claire, please come up and
Well, like everyone, I mean, I'm both humbled and flattered. Just on the generational point, I particularly find it irritating in the contemporary period to have the kind of modern breed of victim feminists say that women have never had it so bad, and that young women today, you know, that one of the problems is that I don't understand what it's like, because I'm old, because young women today are really suffering worse than women have ever suffered. And I think that lack of sense of proportion was put into perspective by Anne Leslie in the way that she was. I think the particularly vicious way that sometimes older women are treated by young women who say, oh, you've managed to put up with people touching your knee and so on because you've internalised misogyny, is so insulting. So I stand on the shoulders of giants, and and as it happens, Anne Leslie's one of the people who, when I was, not that she's that much older than me, I hasten to add, mere youth, when I first heard her speak, when I first encountered her work, inspired me onwards. So to get it with Anne is a particular pleasure. I also think there's a few unsung heroes here. Marissa and Kerry, who've helped organise this, and Ellen, who deserve the scrolls far more than I do, but I'm flattered to have one anyway. Thank you very much.
So I think what we have to think is that the restrictions at the moment also get abused because women who need abortions sometimes can't get them. And what I'm saying at the end of the day, you know, is that for me, it would be better if abortion were not in the criminal law, if it were not criminal for doctors to do them unless women meet certain circumstances, and if women could just go to a doctor, be really open about what they need, and to be able to accept that we need it. If we think that women should be able to control their fertility and choose when they have children, we should be able to say, well, OK, some women will need abortion and it should be for them to decide when it's right.
That was Anne Farady, who's the Chief Executive of the British Pregnancy Advisory Service, BPAS. Anne has been nominated for her tireless campaigning work to decriminalise abortion in the UK. Anne has been CEO of BPAS since 2003, which provides abortion services to nearly 65,000 women a year in England and Wales. She has written extensively in defence of women's autonomy and reproductive choice, and is author of The Moral Case for Abortion. Anne's work has enabled thousands of women to determine their own futures, careers and decisions about when to start a family. Her work to decriminalise abortion completely in the UK has ensured that the final hurdle to women's freedom may well soon be won. I'm very excited about that. Her trust in women and their families puts her firmly in the camp of Sylvia Pankhurst's fine tradition. Anne had planned to be here today, but sadly had to pull out at the last minute. She has sent another veteran campaigner, Rosie Peck, as a representative on her behalf. Rosie, please come up. Thank you so much.
So yes, Anne's been sort of called away to an urgent meeting at the government where she's lobbying for better access for women, so an appropriate reason to not be here. But thank you so much to the organisers for letting me come on her behalf, and I hope to do her words some justice. Anne says, I deeply appreciate this award. I've had a long-standing interest in Sylvia Pankhurst and was thrilled when WORLDwrite made your film. I was drawn to her not just because she was dismissed as the unattractive, inelegant Pankhurst, or for her commitment to universal suffrage, which led her to split with the other Pankhursts, but for her overall political engagement. She was the nearest Britain had to a Bolshevik leader in 1919, and I love the fact that when Lenin dressed her down for not supporting the Labour Party and accused her at a Bolshevik Congress of being extreme, she countered, I think one should be more extreme than one is. I fought a long time in the suffrage movement and I have seen how important it is to be extreme. In politics, it is necessary to stand up for extreme ideas. Furthermore, my opinion has proved to be right. I therefore insist upon my point of view. Fitting for Anne. BPAS is sometimes accused as being extreme. Someone once referred to us as the NRA of the pro-choice movement. My response is that we are extremely pro-choice because you can't be a bit pro-choice, any more than you can be a bit pregnant. We trust women to decide if and when and with whom to have children, and think their abortion decision is theirs, and it's as simple as that. Thank you very much.
The freedom I want to talk about today is actually two freedoms. Freedom of faith and freedom of speech and expression. And I don't think either freedom can exist without the other. To actually profess a faith, to actually say what you believe in, you have to be allowed to say that. You have to be allowed to live your faith. But actually, how do you know what you believe in unless it's challenged by other people's ideas and other faith? You can't have a faith by it being imposed on you. When you want to do something good, something of value, something of virtue, actually you have to choose to do it. You have to do it willingly and consciously.
That was Rania Hafez, founder of Muslim Women in Education, another one of our contemporary heroines who is here with us today. Rania's been a terrific guest on WORLDwrite shows and a rare campaigner for free speech in the face of politicians shutting down debate. She has questioned the government's prevent policy and its failure to tackle anti-human ideas. She is founder of Muslim Women in Education, programme leader for the MA Education at the University of Greenwich, and a fellow of the Muslim Institute. Never afraid to speak her mind, to support freedom of religion, freedom of assembly and free speech, most vitally for those she disagrees with. So I'm very delighted to present this to you with this Freedom Score. Rania, please come up.
Okay, thank you very much, exceedingly humble, thank you. Wasn't expecting this. I'm nowhere near all the other women who are here. I'm my heroes, my heroines, I look up to them. But something Leslie said reminded me of my grandma. I come from Lebanon. I always thought my grandma was some kind of downtrodden woman until I discovered that in the 1930s she divorced my grandfather because he had a roving eye. She went to court and actually gained custody of her 2 boys in the 1930s against the culture that refused her that. And eventually she lived alone for a while. Unfortunately, the conditions defeated her and eventually she had to give up her children and go back. But she did live to 98, very stubborn, on her own, because she really couldn't stand anyone, and she was right with that. What for me, thank you for all the young people, especially in WORLDwrite, for all the wonderful work they do. And if I want to say something, is I straddle many worlds, and yes, we've done immensely well in Europe, but there are still lots of countries where women are really struggling. They're putting their lives on the line for getting freedom, for getting choice, and for the men as well to have that freedom of choice. So it's not a struggle between genders, it's a struggle together for human values and universal values. Thank you very much.
Campaigns against FGM exaggerate both the prevalence and extent of the practice in Britain. While the government makes huge political capital out of the issue, it promotes double standards in regard to NHS data collection about it. That's because a cowardly ministerial directive obliges health professionals to send patient-identifiable data to the Department of Health. Why are women being discriminated against just because they've had FGM? Why do they have fewer rights in regard to data protection than others do? This is wrong.
Well, that was Brid Hehir, our final heroine, and undoubtedly one of the bravest in her campaign work. She's here today with us. Brid has been nominated for her work around female genital mutilation via her Shifting Sands website, which is brilliant. You should all go and have a look at it. Brid has been prepared to question campaigns around FGM, the reported prevalence of the practice, official and media responses, the conflation of different types of procedures, the criminalisation of all practitioners, and panics about it in the UK. It's a very touchy subject. She's very brave to take it on. Brid has worked in the NHS for over 30 years as a nurse, a midwife, a specialist health visitor and a senior manager. She has stood up too for women's freedom, and her very brave stand on an issue which is so emotive is more than deserving of a Freedom Scroll, and we are delighted to have Brid here today.
Wow, I'm honoured, honestly. I've written down what I'm going to say because I know I won't be able to do it otherwise. So it probably won't surprise you to learn that discourse about female genital mutilation and cutting has been shaped almost exclusively by opponents. So public understanding about this increasingly rare traditional cultural practice is understandably limited and confused.
So I've been working for a few years now at trying to expose a flimsy basis for the widespread belief that there's a hidden epidemic of female genital mutilation cutting or child abuse in the UK, and that the whole country has needed its awareness raised in regard to it. I've also been questioning the basis for the industry that has sprung up in response to this supposed epidemic, with its tip of the iceberg predictions of prevalence. Campaigners have become moral crusaders in regard to it, and the outcome of their crusading zeal has been hugely damaging to individuals, families, and communities. And it's worrying for people concerned about the role that these moral crusaders play in general. Working on this issue has been mostly a fairly solitary, hard, tough experience. But it's become worth it, and slowly people are beginning to ask questions, which is very important. It's really gratifying to see that a few media outlets have begun to challenge aspects of the official version, although not yet its entirety. And recently I've begun to work with some really great people, one of whom is in the room here today. People who, like me, feel angry about the one-sided, damaging dialogue. But they are finding their voices and are beginning to challenge and counteract the narrative. So together I'm sure we'll achieve a lot more. Thank you so much.
Pass the bubbly?
Yes. Bubbly has been poured. Just to abuse my position as presenter, to just take a minute to thank the WORLDwrite's crew, Kerry, Marissa, Fraser and everyone involved in putting on this brilliant morning. It's a fantastic thing to celebrate, as Kerry said, robustness, standing up for freedom, and women who are not afraid to stick their neck out at a time when actually it's quite difficult to talk about politics today. So thank you very much, WORLDwrite. For once, I'm delighted to say Happy International Women's Day. Have a drink and have a good rest of the day.
Okay, I'd just like to, one final heroine who we've heard from today is Ella Whelan. She's as deserving, more deserving than anyone, and we're very grateful for her presenting for us today. And we didn't put her on the official list because that looked terribly nepotistic. But we always had her in mind. So thank you, Ella.
Anyway, because they're so nice.
And last but not least, although I think somehow we've lost a scroll somewhere.
We'll find it.
We'll find it. There's someone else who, behind the scenes, again we didn't put on the list because she wouldn't approve. Really helps make WORLDwrite happen, and will work with me till midnight, even if she can't get home, to pull things off. And that's WORLDwrite's Assistant Director, Marissa Pereira. Marissa started off as a volunteer and then took on just about everything that needed doing, then became our volunteer coordinator, and a year or so ago we don't do badges or titles, and who cares what they are. We made her our Assistant Director because she needs it, and it's useful to be able to say you're important when really you're not only important, we just can't cope without you. Marissa.
Well, I have to share this with Kerry because I think we make a good team, a hell of a good team. And it's a pleasure to be here amongst all of you, and I'm very excited about a new film. If you haven't heard about it, it's called Woman, a Success Story. I'm very excited because I am done with this victim narrative that is going around. I want to celebrate how strong, how robust women are, and in this room there are many here, including Kerry here. So hopefully you all help and join in and carry on this great work. Thank you.
Have a toast everybody. Has everybody got some fizz? If you haven't got fizz, pass it on. Everybody got some? We'll even let the camera, Andy and Fraser are so kindly filmed. And first of all, I would like to thank Osme and Farouk, please take some fizz, who run the Clapton table, who've given us this room for nothing today, which is incredibly generous of them. And we've only done it proud. But can I now propose a toast? It's a rare thing to do, but to women and freedom.
Yes!
Women and freedom!